Hi everyone and welcome back to another video. So today's video I'm going to be showing you all the books that made me love romance. So let's just get right into it. So the first book I'd like to talk about is After, by Anna Todd. This was the first series, because I read all of them, that actually got me into reading, because I watched the movie After first, like when it first came out in 2020, not really know what it was. I think it was 2020 anyway, but not really knowing what it was, and then I found out there was books because I was searching, and because I was obsessed with the movie at the time. I was searching just for After things, whatever, and then I found out there was books, and that they originated from books, and it was originally a Wattpad story, and I was like, I need these books. And at the time I hated reading, so that was like the craziest thing to me, but I brought the books anyway and I read them, and I read all the books in a whole week. Like, I was obsessed. I could not put the books down. Like, if I had to sleep, if I had to eat, no, none of that, because I could not put them down, and it was so good. And I never felt anything like that before, and like that's the one thing that I love about reading, is that feeling of like not wanting to leave it because you just want to know what happens and you just want to be in that world. Like, absolutely love it, and I don't think I will ever get that feeling back, because this series just did it for me. And I absolutely loved it so much, and I could probably rave about this forever, but it was like an obsession for a while, and then I even reread them, and it's just crazy. But yeah, that is the first book, a little rant. But yeah, After series, like, I'll forever be grateful for, because like this is the series, this is the book that got me, my hobby, and something that makes me happy. So yes, that is the first book. The next book I want to talk about, I read after that's crazy. But I wanted to find a standalone, and it was actually on Christmas Day, I remember. I got my Kindle and I was like trying to look for something, and then on Instagram someone a couple of days before, I saw that someone on Instagram had put this book on their story, and there wasn't even a reader, like a consistent reader. And I was like, oh, that looks really interesting. Not really thinking much of it. And then a few days later, obviously Christmas Day, I got my Kindle, well, what I call Kindle, but it's actually an Amazon Fire 7. And it was like one of the advertisements. I was like, this has got to be a sign. So I read it. I did read it on my Kindle at the time, but I brought the paperback because I enjoyed it so much, and it was only £5 a while ago. And I'm thinking about doing a reread of this, because I haven't read it since I read it the first time, which was in 2020, so it's been like 3 years or almost 3 years. But this book was crazy. So if you don't know, it's like a paranormal kind of like a bit of mystery and then romance in it as well. So that's why I'm adding it into this video. I wasn't going to originally, because I was like, is it really romance? But I suppose you can class it as romance because there is romance in it. But this story is crazy. Like, I read it so fast, and obviously I was a new reader. Like, normally I did like books, but if I had to read one, I would read it so slowly because I just was not enjoying it. But this book was probably like the fastest I've ever finished a book before. It was crazy. Like, I just absolutely love this book from what I remember, and it was like another 5-star read, and I was like, this is crazy. And obviously I had never heard of Colleen Hoover before, and so after I read this, I searched Colleen Hoover and saw that she had so many other books, and then that is when I read November 9th, Ugly Love, all that. I'm going to tell you a bit of what it's about. So this is about Leeds and Layla, and Layla had this accident, if I remember correctly, and so she's struggling emotionally and physically with like her health. So Leeds decides to take her to this bed and breakfast that they met at, and that is when some crazy stuff happens. But it's so interesting, so fascinating. Like, you will binge read this. I personally love this book, and I do highly recommend. I am thinking, like I said, of rereading it because it's been a while. But also, I don't know if it's a spoiler, but I'm going to say it anyway, because it doesn't really spoil anything about the story. But it does go from what happens in a thing, but also in the interview. There's an interview, but then also like another, like what's actually going on. Does that make any sense? Did I just make that more confusing? Probably. But go and read this if you haven't already, because it's so good. Okay, I'm trying to remember the order that I've read these in so that I can recommend them, but I can't really remember, so I'm just going to try my best. My Goodreads will tell me, but I'm not gonna look. So next one from what I remember is Birthday Girl by Penelope this is when I started to go into like my like taboo romances and like, you know, all that stuff. So I didn't realize at the time what it was. Like, I knew it was age gap. I did look into that, and I was like, I don't think this is going to be my thing, but I'll give it a go. It sounds interesting. And oh my, I, like I said with the last one, I could not put this down. Like, this was so good. I read it in 2 days. Yes, not even 2 days, like 1.5 days. So fast. And it's quite like, you know, chunky book. And I absolutely love this. I tried rereading it recently, but I reread like the first couple of pages and I put it down and never actually picked it back up. So I am going to be doing a reread for this one as well. But yeah, I would never actually be able to like tell you my feelings for this because it's amazing. And the fact that this is the book that got me into like the taboo romances, which is like my main thing at the moment, main thing that I read, is crazy. And like, I absolutely love this. And I also remember that I got this book with so many other books that because I just got into reading, I decided to just buy a big box of books. So I bought a few to get me through for a while, but I ended up reading them all in a week, and there was a good like 8 or 9 in that box, but I ended up reading them all in a week. But that was all taboo romances, because even though I didn't know if I'd like this, all the others sounded good and all the others were different in their own way. So I suppose all those books got me into reading as well, but this was the first one that I picked out of the stack, and I just absolutely love this. Okay, next is My Dark Vanessa. Now, I didn't know if to put this in this video or not, but it is one of the books that got me into reading. It's not classed as a romance. Like, it's not supposed to be romanticized. It is quite a hard topic and hard thing to read. Like, you do kind of feel sick while reading this book, but you are also interested, but not in like a weird way. Like, you want to see her get justice for what happened, so that is why you continue reading. But I'm going to explain what this is about. So this is about Vanessa. She's 15 and she gets groomed by her English teacher, and when she's a bit older, when she's I think in her 30s, yeah, she still thinks that her teacher is like this good guy, like they actually was in love, whatever. And her English teacher has actually had other girls like reporting him and stuff, and she still believes him. And it's very, very frustrating to read, but it's, like I said, it is interesting. Very hard to read, but it's interesting, you know, to get to the end and see everything, you know, unravel. So yeah, like I said, I wouldn't class this as a romance because it definitely isn't. It's not supposed to be romanticized, but it is one of the books that got me into reading because it was written so well, and like, this is just amazing and I highly recommend, but please check the trigger warnings if you decide to read this book. Okay, the next 2 books I have are sad books. I can't remember what one I read first. I think it's this one and then this one. I don't know, but I'm going to show you them both anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So first one is A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole. This, I think, was my first sad book, but this is the one that actually made me like sob. I was reading it, you know, and each time, straight from the beginning, straight from like the grandma point, if you read it, you know, I just kept crying. And it came to the point where my parents came in and was like, are you feeling okay, like, are you alright? And I had to tell them it was about a book, and obviously because it's the first book that made me cry, they thought, oh, I got a bit crazy. But no, it was just, it made you feel so much, and it is definitely heartbreaking, but such a good book. Like, I highly recommend it. And I didn't think it would be my thing because obviously, like, I read Birthday Girl and I read the other books. This was in one of the boxes as well. Well, in the box that I was talking about. I was reading like all these tabooness, and then I was like, am I going to be into YA? Like, I don't think that's my thing, because obviously I tried YA when I was younger and I just didn't like it. So I didn't know if it would be my thing because this is YA. But wow, YA aside, there's so much more to it. Now obviously there might be some things that are unrealistic in this book, but like, you get past that because it's just so heartbreaking, and you know, young love, like, just so sweet. So if you don't know what this is about, this is about Poppy and Rune, and they've known each other since they was 8 years old, and Poppy's grandmother, before she died, gave her a jar of hearts, like 1,000 hearts, and each time she had a memorable kiss, she's got to write it down on one of the pieces of paper that's shaped in a heart, put it in the jar, and then, you know, it's memorable. And so she was basically doing that with Rune, and they kind of like, you know, grew up liking each other, and they was like in a relationship quite young. But then all of a sudden Rune gets told that he has to move back to, I think it's Norway, and so they agree that they're going to talk every day, whatever. So he moves, even though he doesn't want to leave Poppy. He moves, and then a few days later, all of a sudden he doesn't hear from Poppy again, and he doesn't know why. And then he moves back a couple of years later, I think it's like, I want to say 10 years later, and he finds out why she was, you know, why she could contact from him. So yeah, it's very hard to read, but it's such a sweet story at the end of the day. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. And the last book I'm going to talk about in this video is The Fault in Our Stars. So this, you've probably heard everywhere. This was quite a popular book many years ago. When it was popular, that's not when I read it, but I was hearing it everywhere, and I saw it for, you know, quite a few many years, and I decided to pick it up, not knowing it was sad. I had an idea, but I thought I got the wrong book, and then when I, you know, found out it was this book, it broke my heart. So yeah, absolutely love this one as well. I'm going to read the back to you. Despite the tumor shrinking, medical miracle that has brought her a few years, Hazel has never been anything but terminal. Her final chapter inscribed upon diagnosis, but when a gorgeous plot twist named Augustus Waters suddenly appears at Cancer Kids support group, Hazel's story is about to be completely rewritten. So yeah, beautiful story. I absolutely loved it, and this made me sob, but like I said, such a beautiful story. So those are all the books that I had to talk about in this video. Those are all the books that got me into reading. Those are the books, like, I should be saying thank you to, because, like, you know, all this would not have happened if I didn't have the hobby of reading, and that's because of these books. So yeah, that's the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe if you want. It's free, and I hope to see you in my next video. Bye!